Greetings, grace, peace, and blessings. So, have you ever encountered people who were trying to appear better than you or everybody else or something like that? Like I brag about volunteering and brag about helping and brag. So, doing the virtue signaling, whether it's whatever, whether they're on the left or the right. And so when the scamdemic happened, people who were my friends, I didn't realize that they felt this need, such a big need, or that they really liked the cult vibe that the scamdemic brought about. But when I said that, I didn't want to join that cult, like friends wished death upon me, and family was mad at me, and it was pretty shocking because I was just saying I wanted my bodily autonomy. I wanted to remain the way I am because this is the way I was born. The same arguments that feminists talked about their bodily autonomy, the same arguments that the alphabet group talked about, they were born that way. So I was born this way. Don't manipulate my DNA. Don't do all this weird mRNA self-assembling nanotech in my bloodstream activated by 5G. Like, anyway, so it was really out of hand, and it still has not recovered. Like, I talk to strangers, will I test the waters to see how people regarded 2020, and some think that it was just fine, and that the casualties that happened were just necessary, things that had to happen. And I'm wondering if some people actually enjoy the harm that happens to people, because it just doesn't make sense that people would suffocate the children and suffocate elders and suffocate people who had respiratory issues. Like, it was just so mind-bogglingly terrible. And and if you spoke up, if you said, I'm invoking my bodily autonomy, I'm invoking my constitutional rights, the cult members who were happily suffocating themselves and happily injecting themselves with mRNA, I think it's called biogenetic now. So they're happily injecting themselves with mRNA technology, self-assembling nanotech. They're happily breaking their blood-brain barrier, happily breaking that crib form plate all the time, because it's their cult ritual, and they cannot tolerate anybody not being in their cult. And I think a majority of people were weak about the cult coup that occurred in the West. And I think there were some people who were weak. They saw that they didn't want to join the cult, but they just kind of went along with it, but they didn't believe in the cult. But the people you see today in November of 2025 who are still wearing the mask, they were the die hard. I mean, they may be the biggest zealots of the cult, of the scamdemic cult, because they can't let it go. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe the biggest believers of the cult eventually did see the truth. But they got so worked up. And in all my life, I mean, there's always people with a different belief, different diet, different whatever. And that's just life, that there's a variety of people. When I was growing up in New York City, like, I didn't say, hey, why are you this? Why are you that? Blah, blah, blah. And nobody, bashed me for, maybe I had short hair, maybe I had long hair, maybe I wore this, or maybe I wore that. But today, it's, even now, the cult still has an effect on things. And I don't know if, it seems to make sense that, yes, the whole scamdemic and imprisoning people in their homes and keeping people isolated from friends and family, that traumatized people, and people have not recovered. I think, people have brain damage from that. Also, the self-assembling nanotechnology, the graphene oxide running through their blood, breaking their crib form plate with those nasal swabs. It breaks you're breaking your crib form plate is breaking your blood brain barrier. So people are compromised cognitively, and of course, wearing the mask. So your plate is broken, and then you cover your mouth. So you're keeping all the staph and keeping all the biology, the toxins that your body's trying to expel out of your body, because your breath, your lungs are a detox organ. It's one of the avenues that your body eliminates toxins. So it's as if you were, wearing underwear while you're still going to the bathroom. Like, so these people, they're we have a lot of people who are just compromised by all the assaults they've subjected their body to, not to mention the whole psychological aspect of it all. And so I think, like, watching the anti-white, anti-police riots in Minneapolis, everybody trying to say, yeah, I'm burning down a black person's store because I'm a Marxist, and I don't care if it's a black person's store because some white guy did something to some black guy. Like, and that was the logic. That's the logic of the mob, I guess. Just like any violence is good violence. Like, it's demonic, it's satanic. It has no rational, valid, humane human thing. And these anti-white, these racist rioters of BLM, like, they had no apologies. They have no conscience. They have zero morality. Their agenda is this Marxist destruction of civilization. They love burning stores. They love harm, the ending of lives of any human, of anything of God's creation. So that's why they didn't apologize. That's why the BLM co-founder, who spent all the money on mansions in white neighborhoods, okay, that's why she doesn't apologize. She has no conscience. That's why the BLM rioters, they have no conscience. They have no apologies. They have no regard. They're not of this civilization. They're about destruction because they are inhabited by demons. So, anyways, I think the somewhat less demonic people are using the violence of 2020, the summer of 2020, and they think that that's normal, like that you just can get angry at, have a temper tantrum at somebody having a different opinion, when it's just a different opinion. Okay, like, you haven't made contact with any part of their body. You're saying you just are eating paleo, not a vegetarian. But, like, people will be like, oh, now you're killing the planet. There's just this hysteria that maybe one could say has been contagious, and it definitely was contagious with the scamdemic in 2020. And so many otherwise intelligent people just capitulated to it, and they will just, to their dying day, never admit that they were wrong. It's so weird. Like, because I do try to, test the waters with, like, one or two, like, my liberal friends, to see, like, what they're, have they gotten a clue? But no. But the narrative, the media, it just keeps the sheep in line. And it's probably very hard to realize you were wrong. Which brings me to the real meat of what I want to talk out loud here. So when I was a young kid, I grew up in New York City, and so the library had all these books about the Holocaust. So, Hitler was so evil, and, you know, Diary of an Anne Frank, and blah, blah, blah. So now we know that the Diary of Anne Frank was written in ballpoint pen, which hadn't been developed at the time her father claimed to have written it. And it looks to me like, and if you really look at the picture, that's a boy, which is what the Illuminati, Baphomet, Talmudic, Zionist, Satanists do. They are very into the whole transgender thing because they are trying to rewrite God's creation. They love to defile and abominate God's creation. So in the Satanic Baphomet cult, one of the first things is to appear as the opposite gender. And they've been doing this for thousands of years, so they're very good at it. But back to Anne Frank, so it was also plagiarized. So Anne Frank's father stole the manuscript from the original writer, who actually sued Anne Frank's father, and the writer won and was compensated. So it's a fraud, that book, Diary of Anne Frank. But anyways, this was the material that was in the library, and I was just, gobbling it up. And so I was a very staunch anti-German, anti-World War II German, anti-Nazi, anti-Hitler kind of a person, because I was just like, oh my goodness, those people were so terrible and blah blah blah. And then every once in a while there'd be like some clip of a documentary like that Auschwitz didn't have actual like gas chamber showers, because the way it is, there was no place for uh, like there wasn't a vacuum seal, so you couldn't seal it if you were going to kill a bunch of people. There wasn't cemetery, or there wasn't a cremation capacity if they were gonna if it was 6 million people in the amount of time that the mainstream Zionist media tells us. And then there was that in the 50s, the Soviets installed a chimney. I think it was at the Auschwitz bathing area. And the thing is, they did have a mass bathing area because lice was rampant, and lice was a vector for typhus. So, so during World War, and it's important to realize that Churchill, his mother was a Jewish person. Eisenhower was of Jewish Khazarian mafia descent, and Stalin was also, his mother was Jewish. So these all were Khazarian mafia plants. Stalin, Churchill, and Eisenhower. Eisenhower deeply hated the Germans. Churchill said that he wanted the Germans basted in their own flesh, which was, he was granted that because the Allies sprayed white phosphorus onto Dresden. So the Germans were cooked alive in their own flesh, and they couldn't even jump in the water because the water had white phosphorus in it, which burned. So, so that is what happened in World War II Germany, and then the Bolshevik Russians came and just annihilated, just violated the women and children, and nailed them like a crucifix kind of a situation. Just very, even after they were dead, they were, using broomsticks and stuff to violate the bodies. So, of course, this isn't mainstream news, and I just learned about it recently. And all we're told is that, throughout history, these dumb hicks always got mad at the Khazarian mafia. And the thing is, so these Khazarian mafia types are from Iraq, Mesopotamia, Ukraine. Like they're not like the descendants of people who are in Gaza, who are the Arabs of Gaza. So, and if we're going to split hairs about what is Semitic, the Arab language is Semitic. Their genetics are of the Semites, and biblically, like these Khazarian Mafia types are not, of the Semitic tribes. but they're all, they're claiming that somehow they're the biblical, chosen. And it's unfortunate because just because somebody says they're somebody, like, doesn't mean that they are. Like, these are imposters, and they were imposters and thieves and destroyers before they chose to become imposters of the Jews. So these are the Khazarian mafia. And what this group does is they destroy nations, and then they pillage, and they pit members of the nation against each other. So this is very complicated, and it's not a lot of people are aware of it, and that's how these Khazarian mafia types are effective, because the deception is very complicated, and you have to be very diligent, and also just have your wits about you to process the information. So I was, as a kid, I hated the Nazis, and I hated the World War II Germans, and I was kind of like suspect against Germans today, because I'm like, oh, you hate, you know, these people who claim to be Jews. Now, if for those who are very biblical, Apostle Paul says that in this time period that we are in, this dispensation, there are no Jew or Gentile. So biblically, if you're a Christian and you obey Paul, like, there's no Jew or Gentile. So we don't practice, that kind of thing. And I understand, people have their own spiritual process, so I don't begrudge anybody doing whatever they do, as long as it's not human sacrifice. So anyway, it's confusing, but eventually I figured out that what we're told about World War II wasn't accurate. More and more, just like certain things would percolate up, and for instance, the General Patton said that the Germans were the good guys. And I think, like, for me, I have to hear things a couple times, see things a few times before I even get it. But then I just, like, I saw this one guy's article about, like, how, he made it seem like the the success of the Germans to extricate themselves from the international bankers. He made it seem like it was some terrible thing. But if you look at what he wrote, like, so he wrote it like it was so terrible. But what happened is that Germany, like, when Hitler was like, we need to be pro-German. We need to, like, stop people undermining our country, stop usury, stop prostitution, close the child brothels, because that's what there were. There were child brothels in Berlin. Stop the pedophile grooming and the tranny grooming. Have employment, make sure everybody has a home, encourage the family. So that's what the anti-Hitler people were trying to, make sound so menacing. And so who lost their jobs? It was the people pushing the pedophilia. It was people pushing prostitution. It was people pushing porn. It was the real estate, the Khazarian mafia real estate, like big BlackRock and Vanguard type of people. Like, if that happened, BlackRock and Vanguard, they would be very upset, you know. So all these, like, demonized, satanic, communist, Bolshevik, nation destroying type of people, they lost their jobs, and so they were put into camps because, like, Hitler, was like, yeah, let's, like, this, you can go somewhere else. And so I think, and then this other tentacle of the Khazarian mafia. So they think that they can make um, their world domination happen if they move the chess pieces the way they want it. So from what I understand is they negotiated to get Israel to have all the Jewish people live. And so Hitler was like, yeah, that's great. You guys can all have your pedophile orgy porn center. And it is. Like if you research Israel today, it is a pedophile refuge, and all of their uh, immigrants who come there to work get raped, and their children have like this 95% rape incest statistic in the Israeli children. So it's absolutely vile. It's an abomination, and it's mind-boggling that Christians support what these Khazarian mafia imposters do. So, but um, in the West, the World War II Germans, the Nazis, and of course white supremacists today are made to seem so menacing, such a boogeyman. Like if somebody is a white supremacist, it's like Godzilla. Like the world's gonna fall apart if somebody's a Nazi, if somebody's a supremacist. So people expect that kind of power, and I think that's why. And back to the beginning where a leftist, uh, calls you a Nazi if you want your bodily autonomy. If you think differently, and also when you do realize the Germans were right, the Nazis were the good guys, Hitler was a good guy, and white supremacists who are thinking clearly, they're like, white Western culture has wonderful music, literature, art, uh, civilization, structure, intellect, philosophy, religion. Yes, humans are flawed. White people are flawed, but there's a lot of amazingness that white people have brought. So, so these leftists who are morally bankrupt, but they think that if they attack you for not getting injected, for not wearing a mask, these morally bankrupt, soulless leftists, um, who now have this habit of attacking you. Then when you're saying, oh, the World War II Germans were good, Hitler was good, the Nazis were good, white supremacists generally seem to be good to me. They they think they're doing the world a favor by attacking a calm, sane person that believes something different than they do. Um, so I know this is a kind of a long-winded uh, thing, but I think the left has no soul, and all they have been doing is activism. They're trying to save puppies, or save Palestine, or before it was save the Jews. And the funny thing is these same leftists hate the Jews because of Palestine, but they'll defend the Jews because they hate Hitler. Like, these people have no continuity or consistent thought or rationale. They just want to be on the side where they can yell at you. Like the left just wants to be able to yell at you, put you down, kick you, and I'm like, relatives, friends will do this. And it's some weird mind virus that seems to have really happened um, increasingly in 2020. And I think they think that uh, certain things. Like, I'm not a pro Trump person, I'm a pro truth person. And I think Trump is, like MAGA is the fifth degree of witchcraft. And I found this out like well before his second election. So I know this is like, I'm like, well, he's telling us he's a witch, and I have a feeling that actually he's a female to male. So, and I try to bring this up to people, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, no way." Even leftists will defend Trump when I bring up that he's trans. Um, but these people, they have so little in their lives or something. They have no control, and so they're just looking for an opportunity to attack. So if you're pro-Trump, they're going to attack you. If you're pro German or pro-Nazi, like people are like, oh yeah, I can. That's going to be great because I can just like I'm fighting the good fight. So I'm going to attack somebody who's pro-German, pro-Hitler, pro-Nazi, pro-white supremacist. And people, these lefties think that that it's just like they can do like threats, like death threats, rape fantasy death threats at you. And I've had this happen, multiple times on different platforms. Um, but this is not right. That's not good. Like lefties are trying. They think they have the moral high ground. Like they literally expect everybody to just capitulate, and tell the left how moral, how good they are, and when we don't, they just think, oh well, we're just holding back. We're just not. We're not. We're so ashamed. We're not really willing to admit that they're right, and that's not the case. Like the left, it, you know, historically, like we saw it with our own eyes when the left was burning down the cities, for so on one hand, the democratic governors and the rhinos were locking down the cities, but there was literal uh, encouragement to go out and riot. So there's this mixed message. It was so absolutely evil. And the thing is, the reason why cities wanted the rioting, wanted the burning to happen, because they expect federal funds to pay for everything to be rebuilt. And I believe a lot of it has. And more, for homelessness and drug abuse and whatever that was increased because of the lockdowns, um, and just the loss of support structures and stuff like that. And now, like the homeless industrial complex, the drug addiction industrial complex, it's so huge, especially in democratic cities. Like they don't want it to end. They need these NGO grifters, these people who are like, I'm working for a nonprofit. They work to get taxpayer money for their luxurious lifestyle. Like these people have no integrity, they have no morality, but they think because they have this job title, and they're working for this fake you know homeless organization that really is trafficking people or trafficking taxpayers money. They think that we're all dumb, and somehow that it's justified. And it's just, we're in such a mess. We've really lost our way as a human culture. Like I don't recognize Americans anymore. Yeah, somebody might claim to go to church, and they may look conservative. They don't have pink hair or something like that. But in terms of like golden rule, like kind of just the most basic, like do unto me as you would have me do unto you. I do unto others what I would have them do unto me. Like that's a very reasonable thing, but that's not how Americans operate now. Like now, it's like other feminists want to bash whatever low status female that they can attack. I don't know how it is amongst guys, but I read how these two lesbians, they had this 12-year-old boy they tortured possibly to death, and it's just like that's the cult of the left, is how to harm vulnerable males, vulnerable females. Uh, but it's like they want to harm somebody, and they have no shame. Um, and what's just so diabolical is the left will support that. The left will make excuses for it and say that it's it's society's fault or whatever. But I think the left has made Christians a boogeyman, you know, along with all the other things they oppose. Um, and the thing is, like, Christians aren't a boogeyman. Nazis aren't a boogeyman. Uh, you know, like, what the left hates is not the boogeyman. Probably almost, you know, if we look at everything that they hate, it's probably a good thing, like they hate internal combustion engines, they hate fire, they hate whatever, like, but they're still using a laptop or a mobile phone that's been developed, like where minerals were harvested using child slave labor in Africa. So the left is very hypocritical as well. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the left is seeking so hard to, like, take out some aggression, and there's they go for the vulnerable people. They don't know their history, and they think that attacking certain minorities, that they're going to be liked because they do that. They think they're doing the world a favor, and it's just not the case. Um, and so I just think people do it would benefit people to do some more thinking, um, really notice who's being moral, maybe think about what is morality. And it might be important to look at history, really look at history, not the mainstream scrubbed Khazarian mafia history that we're given, but history from a bit more objective sources. And you'll be surprised, you'll be unhappy, but the evidence is out there. They have to leave it out there. That's part of their satanic ritual, is they have to leave us clues. But if we refuse to look at the clues, then you know then you're just willfully ignorant. So, to the lefties who think that you're helping the world by attacking vulnerable people, vulnerable minorities that think differently than you, you're not helping the world. You're an oppressor. You are the empire. You're not the Rebel Alliance. We Christians, we white people, we pro World War II German people, we are the Rebel Alliance. So, and the Khazarian mafia is it's a chameleon. It's good at um, yeah, like imitating and being an imposter. So, like we've seen it, like with Trump doing his song and dance. Like before, he was like, release the Epstein files, and now he's like, there's no such thing as Epstein files. Even though I heard recently, um, or Prince Andrew King, one of the royalty of England, Prince Andrew. Well, he resigned his royalty because of the sex scandal, because of his association with Epstein Island. But now Trump says there's no such thing as Epstein Island thing. But the British royalty are losing their thing because of it, because of Epstein Island logs. So, anyways, that's just how the Khazarian mafia works, and they know our attention span is limited. And I'm just saying, please, do a little research, pay a little bit more attention, be thoughtful about what your values are. Don't let your values be run by maniacs, who are just hysterical. So, anyways, I just wanted to share some thoughts. I don't know if this was helpful, but if so, praise the Lord. Thanks for watching. God bless.